Hey guys, Dave here. Welcome to the Centurions review, the punk rock band of wargame review institutions. This is Goblin from Dwarfstar Games. I'm going to be showing you the basics of how this is played, just a quick overview of the rules, and then Len and I will do our review portion of the video. So this is the setup here. First I want to apologize. You see this reflection you see of the lights in here. This map here is old and it's very warped, so the only way I can keep the map flat is by putting plexiglass above it, and it's reflecting the light, so I apologize for that. I tried it with tape, and tape wasn't able to hold it down because it was so warped. So anyhow, the setup is the Goblin setup in caves on the left side of the map. The middle number on the Goblin leader says how many units can stack with it. So if it has a 3, he can control 3 units. Units cannot move on their own in this unless they retreat. If they're going to move forward or whatever, they have to have a leader stacked with them. Leaders can move independently if they want. And there's zones of control in this. Anytime you enter an enemy zone of control, you have to stop. What's important about that is if you get a rout result on your unit and you're well, let me explain how routing works. If you get routed and you're a Goblin, you have to move back to your caves, and you got 10 spaces to do so. So if you're more than 10 away, you lose the units instead of them routing. Like a cave is considered a safe area. And as far as with the humans, if they rout, they have to move back to a town. However, if while moving, they move into an enemy zone of control, they have to stop movement so they don't make it to their safe area, so those units are lost instead of routed then. So that's the only way you can destroy units in this game, basically, is by preventing them from routing to a safe area. As far as movement in this game, it's not printed on the chits, because I guess that would be too easy. Movement is 10 for infantry and 15 for mounted. Obviously, if the leader who is chooses to be mounted and he's with his infantry, he still has to move at their speed of 10. But however, when they're done moving, he can leave the hex and continue to move on his own for the last 5 if he really wants to. As far as feudal units, they can withdraw off the battlefield if they want to. In the raid game, they're not going to do that. In the campaign game, they may want to. And once a Goblin unit gets within 2 spaces of a human unit, the Goblin's considered spotted. So the human player will pick one of these Baron arrive counters, like this one is +3, which means that your reinforcements will arrive in 3 turns. All right, as far as combat, you have missile fire and regular combat. Not all units have missile fire. Let's turn one of these over here. First number here, the 2, is his missile fire value. The second is his melee value, and the third is his morale class. Missile fire you can split. All right, here's the missile fire table. So if you get one of these numbers here, like a 2+, that means every unit with a morale of 2 or 3 will have to take a morale check, and the morale check table is down here, and with that either nothing happens or you retreat a certain number of hexes or you rout. And then the melee combat table, that's pretty similar. Well, I wouldn't say it's similar. In that one, the number it gives here is the die roll you needed or less to cause a morale check. So what you're trying to do in this game, let's say you're the Goblins, you want to move forward and you want to move to these towns so you can take the plunder there. The plunder, if you get the plunder back to the cave, the plunder is worth either 3.5 points at the end of the game, or you roll a d6 for the number of points. It's your choice how you want to do that. And if you're carrying, let's say these guys here are carrying some plunder, and this guy moves in and attacks them and gives them a retreat check or a rout check, they have to leave their plunder behind. As you see, some of the cities here started with ruins, so those don't actually have any plunder. And here you have the keep and the town around it. There's a lot of plunder there. Some of the plunder have, this one just has 1 bag on it. Some have 2 or 3. So I think the ones with 2 or 3 are over here. Anyhow, so yeah, the goblins will be moving forward, trying to take plunder, and the humans will be counterattacking. The humans, since most of them are not stacked with leaders, the leaders will be going around collecting units to create a bigger force, like you're doing here. And then they'd move in, like, for example, with this one, so they have a large stack that can fight. So that's something the humans are trying to do. And so the goblins will continue this until either their goblin king is killed, in which case the raid scenario ends, or they can just move all their goblins back to the caves, and then the raid ends. For victory points, the goblins, like I mentioned, they'll get points for plunder, and they'll get additional points for humans they killed, but any goblins that's killed will remove points. And after this is all said and done, then the players switch sides and have another game. The human player will be the goblin will be the human. And so the goblin will go forth and try to get as much plunder as possible. And at the end of that game, you'll compare the victory points from that game to the previous one, and whichever goblin got the most victory points is the winner. That's the raid game. The campaign game is similar, except the Goblin King continues until he's reached -8 confidence points. He gets confidence points for destroying units and taking plunder and stuff, and he also loses confidence points for losing troops. So that's how the campaign game works, and after his confidence goes to 0, then he's deposed, he gets hung or whatever, and then the other player becomes the goblin. So anyhow, Len and I will do our review portion now. Hey guys, Dave and Len here. We just played Goblin, a fantasy game of raiding and plunder. Essentially in this game, during the first game, one player is the goblin and one player is the humans. And the goblin needs to raid these towns in order to get loot. Some towns will have a loot that's worth 1, or some will have several bags of loot and so forth. And at the end of the game, the loot that they're able to get off the board, they count it up. They either get 3.5 points for each bag of loot, or they can roll a die and get 1 to 6 points for it. It's up to the player. And in addition to that, any humans that you kill give you points, and any human leaders you kill give you points, and you lose points for each goblin killed, and you lose points for each goblin leader killed. And if the Goblin King is killed, you lose 10 points. That's for the raiding game. So in the raiding game, you play once with one guy as the goblin and one as a human. Then you play another game where you switch sides, and then whoever has the most victory points after 2 games is the winner. There's also a campaign game. We're not going to go into that. I didn't play the campaign, but essentially we'll go into it a little bit. In the campaign game, at the end of the first game, any units that are dead are just dead, if I recall correctly, and then you start the game up again. And the game continues until the goblin leader, his troops lose faith in him, and then it switches sides then. So I know it's kind of confusing. Like I said, I didn't play the campaign game, just the raid game, but what do you think of it?
Well, I'll start with the positive things. Got a good box cover.
Yeah, it does. It is good box artwork.
And the map is good.
Yeah.
And the counters look good. And
too thin though, the counters.
Yeah, too thin and too slippery, and you can stack. Each leader has a number that tells you how many units it can stack with it. So the Supreme Commanders have like 12 units, and that's a big stack. And the map's kind of slippery, even though it looks good. It's kind of slippery, and it gets to be a pain in the ass. And also you have to count it each time. So what they needed were holding boxes for the leaders.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Because if you got like a battle where you got a goblin leader who's got 12 troops with them, and he's another goblin leader with 8, and another goblin leader with 5, and then you got a human with like 4 units with them. First thing that happens during the battle is all the damn counters fall down, and so yeah, I mean it's very distracting when you have the excessive stacking like that with the super thin counters, because you're spending more time trying to put stacks back together that fell down and stuff than trying to think about tactics, so it's very distracting. Usually games like that I don't win because I'm just completely distracted by the counters constantly falling over. And then when there's combat, if you got 12 units in a stack, you got to count your missile fire from 12 units there, or how many have missiles, and your melee value and stuff. So I don't know, it just slows stuff down. I wish it would have been like a stacking limit of 3 and they had more powerful units.
Yeah.
In addition, the combat results for this, the first result is essentially a morale check. If you do bad in... If you're hit in missile fire, you take a morale check, and then you're either going to retreat a few or rout. If you rout in your goblin, you have up to 10 spaces you can rout, and you have to make it back to a goblin cave, or you're destroyed. And the humans, they have to make it back to a town, which is easier. But if you're stopped during routing for any reason, like say you enter an enemy zone of control, you just stop there, and then you don't make it to your target, and you lose your unit. So that's the only way you can lose units pretty much in this game, is from retreating or routing and not being able to do so. That's the only way you can cause a unit loss. Otherwise, stuff just retreats and routes. And so the humans are just trying to... The humans are underpowered in this, but they're trying to get morale checks on the goblins, because once the goblins are more than 10 spaces away from the tunnels, they're going to lose those units if they can't make them there during the route. So I don't know. It's kind of interesting. I mean, the game, the concept behind it and the scenario is good. It's just that the excessive stacking just got out of hand, and the game really ruined it with the tiny, thin counters. If they're big counters that were thick, yeah, you can have stacks of 12, and it's not going to be that big a deal. But yeah, in this game, yeah, the excessive stacking hurt it.
Yeah, and also it's like... the melee phase. Oh, first of all, the missile stuff, one guy shoots and then the other guy shoots, and you see if and then you have to roll for morale and stuff like that. Okay, simultaneous archery fire I could take. But then the melee, it should be like an odds ratio or a plus minus. Just, everybody counts it up. And then you roll the dice and you check the combat results table, and that tells you what happened.
Yeah, they needed a combat results table with like attacker effects on it, because on your turn, you're going to do melee against a unit, and it's going to do melee against you, and then on their part of the turn, both sides do melee again. So it's kind of silly. I mean, might just have a combat results table where the attacker can take casualties, and then you only have to have melee once during the goblin phase and once during the human phase.
Yeah. So,
overall, would you recommend it?
it wasn't that bad a game, but it wasn't an exciting game.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, it seems like you're forever counting units. You're forever, okay, you roll for your melee. Okay, time for my melee. And it just kind of we're kind of boring. And also, they got to change the combat system. It should be one, because my vision, and I defend it as the townspeople, is like the Ardennes, 1945, and I'm the Americans. I put units out as roadblocks to slow you down, and then and hopefully knock off a step or two. So at the point where you like midway through the map, you should have lost a few units, and you're not as powerful as you used to be. And this didn't have that feel. Of course, when I was the Goblin, I showed you how to maneuver them, to surround them, and eliminate them.
Yeah, he did a better job running the Goblins than I did. I did a pretty poor job, but oh well.
Remember the one rule of warfare. Dead people cannot counterattack. Dead people cannot retreat. Dead people cannot...
Well, the only way to kill them, though, is to get them, in this game, is to get them to retreat or route. That's the only chance you have of eliminating a unit. So.
Yeah, and also, having units, if they have to move adjacent to a unit, that screws them.
Yeah.
And I was amazed my Goblins are maneuvering as if they have radios. So, maybe that's something to think about. Maybe you can only attack one stack per combat. Yeah, they may not be the great, because like I said, I felt when I was playing Goblins, I felt like I was running a Panzer division. I was humming the Panzer League song as I played.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if it had less units, but the units were more powerful, I think the game would have been a lot better. Get rid of that morale nonsense. Just have a standard combat results table. If it had those two changes in it, it'd probably be one of the best micro games ever made. But as it is, this is a mediocre micro game. But you can get it for free. Let me explain. Online, I think it's at Brainiac.com. I'll put a link in the description for the video. You can download a PDF of this and build your own game for free. I believe Reaper Miniatures owns all these Heritage micro games from, actually they're Dwarfstar games, which was owned by Heritage. And most of them, Reaper will let you print a copy for free. So don't buy this. I mean, on eBay they charge $90 for this. This is not worth $90. In my eyes, this is worth $20 if it's in mint condition. So don't pay the $90 or $200 or whatever Noble Knight Games is trying to rip you off, whatever price they have. Just print it out and get it for free. I got this at auction for like $5, so I wouldn't pay $90 for this. That's ridiculous. Anyhow, thanks for watching. We'll review something else next week.